Hey guys, good morning and welcome to another episode of Motorcyclist MC Commute. You guys know the deal this morning. We're going to be riding to the motorcyclist office in Southern California on Suzuki's 2020 GSX1300R Hayabusa. So let's throw the helmet on and go for a ride.
All right, here it is, guys. Suzuki's 2020 GSX1300R. This is Suzuki's top-of-the-line hypersport bike. This is a liter plus size sport bike designed for people that want to go fast, really fast. Suzuki has been making these motorcycles since 1999, 21 years of the Hayabusa. It was designed to appeal to riders who want something that is just the fastest thing on the road. And the Hayabusa is just that. The styling of this motorcycle is very iconic. You've probably seen it in movies, you've seen it in magazines over the last couple decades, and there is nothing that stands out like a Suzuki Hayabusa. These motorcycles have a lot of street cred. Any city you go, any place you go, if you pull up on a Hayabusa, people know you mean business. Aftermarket has really embraced these motorcycles. These things are tough. People mod them. They put turbos on them. They stretch the wheelbase. They lower them. They put nitrous on them. These bikes are ripe for modification. But enough talking about Suzuki's 2020 Hayabusa. Let's swing a leg over it and see how fast we can go. Alright guys, here we are. A good old-fashioned mechanical key. Old school style. But I like it. And away we go, guys, on Suzuki's 2020 Hayabusa. Right away, sitting on this motorcycle, I like the way these bikes fit me. This motorcycle has a super stretched out riding position. It's probably one of the motorcycles that's set up for tall riders more than anything. If you have an NBA sized physique, you're gonna like this motorcycle a lot. Reach to the handlebars is a stretch even for me at 6 foot tall. The control levers, they have a crazy wide range of adjustment. I always like running these levers a little bit closer to the handlebar because I have smaller hands. But if you have big hands, you can move the levers very far out and still have good control of the motorcycle. It's really clear that this bike was set up for taller riders in mind. The foot pegs they're not crazy high, but they're definitely not in a relaxed position. The ergonomics on this bike are contemporary sport bike, or I'm sorry, classic sport bike, really. So foot pegs kind of high, seat far back, clip-ons a little bit low, not too low, but definitely a little bit low. The bend of these clip-ons too, where modern sport bikes the clip-ons are actually pushed outward more race bike style. These things are still inward, a little bit tricycle style, like we've spoke about before. Not a bad thing, but definitely not as good for track performance or, racing performance. Hydraulic actuated clutch makes for a real nice smooth lever pull. I like the engagement point, it's easy to find. This is an easy bike to launch. And speaking of launching, we didn't drag test this bike at the drag strip, but I have ridden this bike at the drag strip a million times before, and these bikes are really friendly to launch. The clutch has good response, the throttle is not too twitchy, it's not too mellow either, and just having this stretched wheelbase on this motorcycle makes for a bike that's just ridiculously easy to launch. It's not quite as easy to launch as the Ninja ZX14R, but it's not bad by any means either. Now, what I like about this Hayabusa is just how well it rides on the road. with a wheelbase that measures almost 5 feet long, this thing just, it glides over the road really well. The suspension is a little soft-ish in its standard configuration, but with full adjustment you can really tailor the suspension settings to the way you like to ride. When you're wailing through this thing in the corners, this bike has a really low stance. You add some spring preload to the fork and the shock, and that picks the bike up, lets you mash on the brakes a little bit harder and mash on the throttle a little bit harder without having to worry about the bike running so low in the stroke. So I usually like to pick the bike up when I'm wailing on it in corners, but if you're just going to be doing a lot of straight line riding, just standard configuration is just fine. And even the standard configuration in the corners, it's not bad. It's just you have to be a little bit more aware of the chassis and how it's just going to ride a little bit low. 6-speed gearbox, no electronic quick shifter, no auto blip, but this gearbox is just so smooth. Everything on this bike is just so smooth. There's virtually no engine vibration, just a hint you can feel through the foot pegs, but it's not off-putting at all. Suzuki really went crazy with the refinement, and realistically, even though this bike is 7 years old, the last time it was updated, it was 2013. They put on ABS and Brembo radial mount calipers. So 7 years old in current form, but even to this day, this is probably one of Suzuki's smoothest and most polished running motorcycles it's ever built. So kudos to them for getting it right away. And I just love this engine. This thing just makes so much torque and so much power. You barely even have to rev it and it's already up to 70 miles per hour. This is an engine that you can short shift and lug, or you can rev to its 11,000 RPM red line, and either way the engine is happy to comply. Right around 170 horsepower, I believe, out of this thing at the back tire. And this thing scoots. Power to weight ratio is nothing to really write home about. This bike weighs 586 pounds. This is no featherweight. This is a heavy motorcycle. And even though the engine produces a crazy amount of thrust, it's a heavy bike, and the power to weight ratio is just nowhere even close to a modern leader bike. You got to remember, the leader bikes these days are putting around 180 horsepower at the back tire, and they weigh right around 425 pounds. So leader bikes technically are faster than the Hayabusa these days, but they're also harder to launch because they're so light, because they have short wheelbases, because they have peaky power. You're gonna have an easier time launching this bike, even though there is no launch control or traction control or any of those rider aids. It's just the immediate power, long wheelbase, and excellent clutch just make for a bike that's really easy to get off the line consistently. No electronics on this bike aside from ABS. Actually, there is some form of electronic. We have Suzuki's SDMS adjustable throttle map system here. Suzuki was an early innovator in fuel injection and adjustable engine power maps with their, I believe it was their GSX1300R back in 2007, and then you date back, I think, the 1999 GSX750, 98, 99, had fuel injection. So it's crazy. Suzuki has a long history in electronics and fuel injection. They did it first, they did it best in the beginning. Fast forward to today though, and they haven't really updated this adjustable engine power system. By default, the motorcycle is in power mode A. A is maximum power. You can also choose power mode B and power mode C by this control here. Power mode C just reduces engine power and makes the motorcycle easier to ride. So if you were a new Hayabusa rider, or maybe you were letting your friend ride your Hayabusa and you wanted something that's a little bit easier for them to ride, you could put it in power mode C. Conversely, if you wanted to have a little bit more power, you could leave it in power mode B, and it would give a little bit more power feel, but still not quite as powerful as power mode A. What the heck happened up here, guys? In 2013 Suzuki Fit the Brembo radial mount, 4-piston caliper, same type of caliper it's been using on this GSX-R sport bike for a while, and fixed always on ABS. The triple disc brakes on this bike, they definitely do a good job of slowing down this 586-pound Hayabusa. I like the brake feel, I like the power, I like the wide range of lever adjustability, but compared to a modern sport bike, the brakes just don't have enough power nor feel. You know, I've been riding these bikes for a long time, so I personally like the brakes. They're not terrible by any means, but in today's high performance world, these brakes are definitely lacking in terms of power and feel. Though to be fair, the rear brake, I like the rear brake a lot, because this motorcycle has so much heft and it can have a good amount of pitch movement when you're on the brakes riding hard in the canyons. It's nice to have that strong back brake which helps squat the rear of the suspension and control the chassis a little bit more when you're riding in the canyons. And for a 586-pound bike, this thing is crazy maneuverable. It is really amazing how agile this bike is. Of course, this thing is nowhere near as agile as a sport bike, a leader class sport bike, but still, for a bike with a nearly 60-inch wheelbase, this thing does very well. I love the windscreen and this whole front cowling. It just does a great job of shielding the rider from the elements. You're in this like comfortable cocoon where the air is not very turbulent. It's a very comfortable riding position. Realistically, Suzuki, they should have offered hard case luggage and cruise control on this motorcycle and just called it a sport touring bike, because you can absolutely sport tour on this motorcycle. It's fast, it's smooth, it operates very comfortably at high speeds, the suspension's nice, and the fuel tank capacity is pretty decent, 5.5 gallons of capacity. These days, the sport motorcycles are having smaller and smaller and smaller fuel tanks, so it's nice to see that this Hayabusa still has a generously sized tank. Instrumentation here, basic, analog, but functional. I love the speedometer. I love the way the speedometer just sweeps to the right like crazy when you're giving this thing the beans. Look, the speedometer goes all the way to 180 miles per hour. It goes that high because this motorcycle will literally go 186 miles per hour. It's electronically limited to that top speed, so it will not go any faster than 186 miles per hour. But how cool is that? Fuel gauge keeps tabs on the 5.5 gallon tank, and you have a gear position indicator. Yes, I wish this instrumentation or the whole bike for that matter, got a facelift, but you can't say that this instrumentation's not functional, because it is. Alright guys, another corner, and I really like how this thing handles through corners. The OE fitted Bridgestone Batlax BT015 tires. These are a very old spec tire. They feel hard. They don't have a lot of feel, but believe it or not, they're actually pretty fun to ride on in the canyons. Because this bike has such a long wheelbase and has such good immediate low end power, you can spool up the rear tire pretty easily on this bike, and it's fun to control. Yes, there's no traction control. Yes, there's no slip control, but because the throttle response and the wheelbase are so complement each other so well, this bike's pretty easy to power slide off corners. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's true. Alright guys, here we are on the freeway again. This motorcycle is awesome for riding on the freeway. Yes, the ergonomics are sport bike-ish and a little bit less comfortable than an upright bike, but still not terrible. I love this big windscreen. I love the fact that we're riding at 85 miles per hour in top gear, and we're only pulling 4,700 RPM in revs. That is awesome. Alright guys, we're on the boring freeway slog. This is the most boring ride in the planet of Earth. So we'll check in with you guys in a little bit when we're doing more fun stuff. Alright guys, that was a fun, not so much fun, but a quick and comfortable ride on the freeway on Suzuki's 2020 Hayabusa. I absolutely would totally ride this bike on the freeway for long stints. Speaking of the name Hayabusa, its name comes from the peregrine falcon. Peregrine falcon is a predatory bird that achieves crazy speeds as it drops down and swoops for its kill. So that's where the Hayabusa name comes from. We rode this bike in the evening, and that is one feature that could be better on the Hayabusa. It still uses old school halogen lighting all the way around. Oh, wheelie test time guys. No traction control, none of that crap to turn off. Yeah, it wheelies good. Look how good it wheelies. Yep, definitely passes. And because the wheelbase is so long, this thing is excellent at stand-up wheelies. Back to the headlights. The headlights could be better. They're halogen bulb based all the way around. We would love to see LEDs. We know Suzuki's got a Hayabusa redesign done. They have to have one. So hopefully the new Hayabusa, whenever it is officially announced, will have LED head beams. Not terrible for a halogen beam setup, but LED, once you go to a modern LED setup with cornering light functionality, there's just nothing better. Well guys, there she is, Suzuki's 2020 GSX1300R Hayabusa. I've always liked these bikes a lot. They are comfortable, they are fast, they are silky smooth, they are head turners. They are really neat motorcycles for you connoisseurs of speed, polish, and comfort. Let's do some quick Q&A, guys. Yami Noob writes, are you finna slap a turbo now or later? Ha 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 ha. No turbos today, but I would love to slap a turbo on this bike. I've never actually ridden a turbocharged Hayabusa, so I'd love to get on one, pump up the boost to 10 or 20, and let her rip. How does it compare to Kawasaki ZX14R? Compared to the Ninja CX14R, these motorcycles are very comparable. The ZX14R is just a little bit more competent in the sport touring realm. It's even more comfortable at speed. It's easier to launch off the line. I wouldn't say it's any faster or slower. They're comparable in speed. It's just that Ninja is extremely easy to launch just because of the clutch and how low it sits in the wheelbase and the power band of the inline four engine. That's what really separates these bikes. I'm a Suzuki guy though, through and through, so I prefer the Hayabusa, even though the Ninja CX13R is technically superior to this bike. Any significant changes for this model year? Absolutely not. This is the same GSX1300R Hayabusa that was released in 2013, made in Japan. And even though this is an older style motorcycle, the build quality and the fit and finish still is top notch. You'll need to get a Commute. You will need to commute to a job to pay for all the speeding tickets you'll get. Ha 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 ha. This motorcycle is very quick, and it is very easy to let the speed get out of control, because this motorcycle can cruise comfortably at 120 plus miles per hour. Not that I would know that, but it can do it. It's crazy how smooth this bike is at speed. This bike is designed for the Autobahn. If you lived in Germany on the Autobahn, you'd want this motorcycle, absolutely. How are the MPG and range per tank? How's the engine heat? How is it easiest to lane share on your Commute? This thing averages right around 36 miles per gallon. That's riding at a little bit of a faster clip. If you go more mellow, keep the engine RPMs real low, it'll get even better gas mileage. Of course, if you're revving her out to redline and really wailing on her, she's going to drink a little bit more fuel. 5.5 gallon tank, so this thing has some range. I like how much range this bike has. There is no engine heat, or very minimal. It's not off-putting. It's not excessive at all. And this motorcycle, for as big as it is, it's quite maneuverable in traffic. I like its substantial size too. All right, guys, that's enough Q&A for today. Would I spend my nearly $15,000 on a new 2020 GSX1300R? I like this bike a lot, but I would not purchase this motorcycle new. I would look to the aftermarket or look on the used motorcycle scene. Again, these motorcycles haven't changed in 7 years, so you're going to be able to purchase this motorcycle for a good deal on the used bike world. If I could buy this bike for right around $9,000, I absolutely would. This is a motorcycle you want to have in the garage. You need something that can grab a gear and disappear at moment's notice, and this bike is it. Well, guys, there you go. That's a review of the 2020 Hayabusa. Make sure to surf on over to motorcyclistonline.com. That's where all the written content goes for these motorcycle reviews. So make sure to check out that website, subscribe to our newsletter, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys.